Just in the light of Congress coming to a bipartisan agreement, we got a chance to speak with the current candidates on the situation in Washington and how they'll maintain political peace. Here are the stories.
Good morning, Mr. Decker, and thank you for joining me today. The second debate ended yesterday with the candidates discussing the government shutdown, but in light of Congress coming to a bipartisan agreement at the 11th hour, what is your plan to avoid another government shutdown should you be elected next Thursday?
Well, I think the root of the problem was that Congress couldn't talk to each other. The way bills are supposed to be passed is that the Senate passes a bill, and then the House passes a bill, and then they come together in this thing called a conference committee. And it's where the two different chambers, the two different parties, come together in this conference and work out the kinks so that one bill can pass both the House and the Senate. And Republicans have been blocking the formation of a conference committee for the past couple of years. And that's made it really difficult for Congress to get its act together and not have these kinds of last minute, dramatic shutdown things. And so I know that President Obama has pushed for conference committees already being created for the next fiscal year. And I think that's a really good plan, and that's what I would push for too, because being able to get the two parties together to compromise, to work out the kinks, to work out the deals, and to get a budget passed before, the due date. Like, we basically just procrastinated this budget until the last minute, and then it almost didn't go through, and it almost cost the economy billions of dollars.
Do you think that it was explicitly the Republican Party's fault?
I think there's a lot of partisan divides in Washington, but in this case, yes, I do, because the Republicans were trying to make a point that they didn't like Obamacare. These 40 or so Republicans in the House, they wanted to make a point that they didn't like Obamacare, that they wanted to defund it, that they wanted to take the money away from it, that they didn't like it. And so they held the country hostage, basically, saying, we're going to shut down the government, we're going to walk right up to defaulting on our loans just because we want you to change a bill that has already been passed by Congress. It's been ruled constitutional by the Supreme Court, and it's signed by the President. It has the President's name on it. And so there's been three branches of government that have verified this bill, and the Republicans came in and said, we want it changed. And then they look at the President and they get mad at him for not negotiating. And the President didn't negotiate because this law has been passed. Obamacare has been passed. And so he didn't feel that he needed to negotiate on a law that has already been passed. I mean, it was passed by 60 votes in the Senate, supermajority. It went through 3 years ago, and the Republicans now are trying to hold up the government to stop it. So yeah, I do think it's the Republicans' fault, but I think both parties could come together to work better in the future.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Decker.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Vasquez.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining me today. The second debate ended yesterday with the candidates discussing the government shutdown, but in light of Congress coming to a bipartisan agreement at the 11th hour, what is your plan to avoid another government shutdown should you be elected next Thursday?
Well, allow me to ask a question to the American people. If your house got flooded, would you raise the ceiling or pump out the water? Because right now what we are doing is we are avoiding the problem by raising the ceiling. So what we need to do is we need to pay off our debts. And paying off our debts and decreasing America's debt will make us stronger more domestically and internationally. Right now we are in Washington. We are only avoiding the problems by shifting our bad choices to our children and grandchildren. So what we need to do is I need to get the Democrats and the Republicans to come to a compromise, and we need to diminish the government.
Do you believe that the government shutdown was explicitly the Republican Party's fault?
No, I believe it was both the Democrat and Republican Party for not being able to come to a compromise, and because we don't have a strong leader to lead them right now.
Do you think you could be that strong leader?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Good morning, Mr. Weber, and thank you for joining me today. The second debate ended yesterday with the candidates discussing the government shutdown, but in the light of Congress coming to a bipartisan agreement at the 11th hour, What is your plan to avoid another government shutdown in February should you be elected next Thursday?
Question. Under the Republican watch, in the first place, this would have never happened. In our current situation, I believe that my Republican leadership would prevent another crisis like this from ever reoccurring. I would work hard with the leaders of the House and the Senate to create a new budget that would cut costs yet still provide services to the American people. We are currently around $17 trillion in debt. This is unacceptable. I will ensure that our economy is on a gradual recovery and a new budget is put in place by 2014 underneath my leadership.
This has been your weekday update with Kyle Buchanan.